Hello again, friends, and welcome back to Bantam Battles, solo war games, RPGs, and tabletop sports with a small footprint. Robert Max here. This is log number 29, and in this episode, we're going to be doing a character creation and background for Scarlet Heroes. I've been talking about this for a while, excuse me, and we're going to go over the character I've created and a bit about his background and a little bit about the setting for Scarlet Heroes. Now, I know a lot of people utilize Scarlet Heroes, the solo war game oracles in the back, to play various other solo RPGs. Seen videos by Artichoke Dip, Dungeon Dive, who else? Gosh, I don't know. There's quite a lot of videos out there. A solo RPG guy talks about Scarlet Heroes, but I am so intrigued by this setting that Kevin Crawford has come up with that I am going to exclusively use Scarlet Heroes as a standalone RPG. You definitely can do that. I know a lot of people just, hey, when you're solo RPGing, you can do whatever you want, right? But I am just so interested in this setting and the mythology and history that was written for it. So I'm going to be using two books. I'm going to be using the Red Tide book, which is also written by Kevin Crawford. I believe this is what led to Scarlet Heroes. This is a setting for an OSR RPG, and of course Scarlet Heroes is the standalone RPG. I'm going to be using these two items exclusively for everything. Scarlet Heroes has everything in it that you would need to run a solo campaign. But for me, because I'm so interested in this setting, the mythology and history of the Sunset Isles and, the Red Tide, there's more depth in this book. And I think it's going to add a little bit of, extra flavor to the campaign. So, to start things off, like I said, there's a lot of videos out there that have covered this. I'm just going to read from the back of the Red Tide book. For 300 years, the last remnants of humanity have clung to the wild green jungles of the Sunset Isles. They have watched the red mist that consumed their world roil 100 miles off the coast, waiting, a beast at bay. But now the crimson dreams are becoming stronger, and the wild Sioux tribes of the West howl their hate at the human invaders. Who shall rise to save a world quenched in blood? So that's like a very brief synopsis of the situation. Like I said, I won't go into any detail. There's some other great videos out there. Oh, another one that comes to mind is Stone Axe Tabletop. These people are a lot more experienced than I am, and they can do a lot better explanation than I could. So tonight's video is going to just be a character creation and a bit of a background for the character that I came up with utilizing these two books. So, to start things off, I'm going to have to look at a map. I believe it's on page 47. Well, first of all, here's a map of the archipelago that is known as the Sunset Isles. And we're going to be mostly concerned with the main island, the largest, which is called Ektau, excuse me. My pronunciations may not be right, Mr. Crawford, accept my apologies. But anyway, a long time ago, a man named Lai Kang and his daughter, Lai Rao, moved from the Magocracy of Tianlong into the Westmark. Tianlong is a very corrupt province on Ektau, and mostly settled by, a slight majority of the people are what they call Imperials. And those were the first ones to seek refuge. The Sunset Isles were Sioux lands, and when the Red Tide took over the rest of the world, various human tribes sought refuge here. So they kind of pushed the Sioux to the west part of the island. And one of the first ones to arrive were a group of people that followed the Ninth Celestial Empire, and they're known as Imperials. So this man, Lai Kang, and his daughter Lai Rao lived in Tianlong, but decided to move to the Westmark. Now, the Westmark is kind of like an untamed wilderness, but some people, who are willing to take risk have gone there and settled and, tried to start villages or settlements and also to conduct some farming. And that's what Lai Kang was. He was a farmer. Now, his wife had died at a young age after giving birth to the daughter Lai Rao. So she did not make the trip with them. And her name was Lai Jie. But anyhow, Kang and his daughter Rao moved to the Westmark, the wilderness of the Westmark. And one day, during a Shu raid, Rao was kidnapped by a raid party leader who was a Shu orc named Shamashizar Dangaluna. That's the name of the tribe that he belonged to. Well, he kidnapped her and was going to take her back to the Shu lands, to be a slave, because they would have these raiding parties all the time. But what happened was, it turned out he realized he kind of liked Rao. And so instead of putting her into the slave pool, he kind of hid her in his encampment. And eventually they developed a relationship, and the result of that relationship was a male child who they named Damgalnuna Liu. His surname was Li. His surname was Damgalnuna. The Asian convention of using the surname first. So his name was Damgalnuna Liu. His first name was Liu, and he was a boy. And he had given Rao and Liu a small place to live on the border of the Shu lands. And he would come and bring them supplies, and he took care of them, even though he was basically leading a double life. He was still acting as a raider that would raid into the Westmark and, rape and pillage, but he took care of them. And then one day he just never came back. So no one knows what happened to him, but they assumed that he died, or someone found out about what he was doing and they executed him. No one, they don't really know. So what happened was Rao and Liu moved back to Tianlong. They traveled back to Tianlong and settled in the city of Tianlong because they had family there. And by this time, Liu was a teenager. Rao was a young adult. And he, to help supplement their income, he started performing in street fair. He became quite an accomplished acrobat, and she took a job as a servant maid at the Academy of Refulgent Wisdom, which is basically the center of government in Tianlong. And she worked for the enlightened sage, who is the leader of the province. Now, one day she came home from work very ill, and she never recovered from it. Liu took care of her as best he could, but sadly she succumbed to her illness. He believes it is some red tide magic that had killed her. He doesn't know what happened. She was not willing to tell him because she was afraid he would seek revenge. And so she passed away. He continued to perform with this street fair as an acrobat, but he was also conducting at night, he would become a thief because, they were having trouble making ends meet, but he would never take anything more than what they needed. And so now that she's gone, he has a goal in life to find out what happened to his mother. And he knows he can't, with the experience that he has right now, that he can't, enter into the academy and confront the enlightened sage. He just doesn't have the experience or the know-how to do that. So he's basically a lone warrior who is going to be conducting adventures in the city of Tianlong, trying to gain experience and strength. And so I've rolled up this character. Now, I said his name is Damgalnuna Liu, but when he performed in the streets, he used the name Lai Damga. Lai for his grandfather's surname and Damga for his father's. So that's the name that most people know him by, and that's the name that we're going to use for him. So off camera, I did all the roles. Like I said, there's plenty of videos out there, and if you've played any OSR games, you know the the procedure. So he's going to start off with a strength of 10, dexterity of 16, constitution 15, intuition 14, wisdom 11, and charisma 9. He has 5 hit points. His armor class is a 5. He has an attack bonus of +1 and a fray die of 6. Now, one of the things in Scarlet Heroes that's a little bit different is this fray die. It's supposed to represent the random slashes, during combat. And you can only utilize that against a foe that is at your level or lower. But it is some extra damage that you can cause. Now, another thing with Scarlet Heroes are these traits. Now, due to, I kind of mentioned he is a thief. That's the class. He is a thief, and his race is Shao-blooded. So he is a Shao-blooded Imperial. Of course, he starts at level 1 and has 0 XP. He has a lot of gear here. I won't go through all of that, but he's not over encumbered. He can carry up to 60 pounds. I believe he's at 42 or something like that. Not sure. But anyway, his traits and abilities. Due to the fact that he's a thief, his damage die is limited to a 1d8. But he can, when attacking an unsuspecting foe, he can add 4 to his attack range and 3 times damage. He's an these traits and abilities are modifiers to his die rolls. And, just like other OSRs, you got modifiers over here for his scores. Okay, but one of the more important ones for him in these traits and abilities is the ability to resist the red tide. That comes from the fact that he's shoe-blooded. And so if he comes up against some red tide evil mage, that has the red magic, the evil red magic, he might be able to resist that. He also has a keen sense of danger, and he's an acrobat. As I said, he learned that trade acting or performing in the street fair. And his only weapon right now is a short sword, which has a damage of 1d6. And he still has some treasure. I didn't use up all of his money. He's going to be conducting most of his, for right now, all of his adventures are going to be in the city of Tianlong. That's going to do it for the character creation and a bit of his background. I know I stumbled a little bit on this because I was having problems pronouncing these names. But I also did create a little portrait of how I pictured Lai Damga. And people have asked me before. I'm going to put it up now. You can see it's very similar to the portraits I create for my 4 Against Darkness characters. And some folks have asked me, like, hey, how do you do that? Well, really, it's this program called Hero Machine 3. It's a Flash program. Now, I know Flash is no longer supported by Windows or Mac, but the link for the program is still available online. I'll put that in the description for the video. And all you got to do to still use this program is to download the Flash Player debugging program. You can still get that from Adobe. You download that program, you put in the IP of this Hero Machine 3, and you can work with it locally. So when I created this portrait of Lai Damga, I thought it was quite a coincidence and really interesting that there was actually a background that's, very similar to the the cover of the Red Tide book. So yeah, that just worked out like by coincidence. So that's going to do it for this episode. The creation of Lai Damga. His adventures will be starting, and I will be back to cover him in a future episode. Also, coming up, the BBAFL first leg has been completed. So I have a review video for the results of the games and the tables. And also some other things coming down the line, some war games I want to get to. I know I've mentioned The Way of the Warrior, World War II. Looks like a real interesting roll and write World War II squad level campaign game that I could play right here on a single sheet of paper. And I'm still working on the rules, getting through the rules on that. And some other things coming down the line. Of course, the 4 Against Darkness campaign continues. And I need to do an update video on that as well. So that's going to do it for this episode. I'd like to thank you for watching. And if you haven't already, please consider liking and subscribing to this video. And also clicking on that notification bell that you'll be informed when I have a new video online. So that's going to do it for tonight. Take care.